Know from whence you came. If you know whence you came, there are absolutely no limitations to where you could go. James Baldwin. I'm not a nigga. I'm African. You are a nigga. These words were spoken to me by an African cab driver who refused to drive my friends and I to the South Side. That's one side of the story. The other, you just left Africa? Did you ride any elephants? My name is Vic Mensa. I'm a hip hop artist from the South Side of Chicago. I've never ridden an elephant, and I am, in a most literal sense, an African American. My father is from a small slum called the Asakore Zongo in a town called Koforidua in the eastern region of Ghana. My mother is white American from a town called Ithaca in upstate New York. Africa existed in the imagination of my childhood friends primarily within a framework of caricatures, the most famous of which was by far African Booty Scratcher, with Spear Chucker coming in a close second. Although these caricatures are very one-dimensional, they are, however, not so much of a departure from what Black Americans are shown of Africa. Take, for example, the UNICEF commercials. Emaciated African children in mud huts that you can save for $1. Although well-intentioned, the narrative is one of scarcity, not of Africa as the most resource-rich continent on the planet. I've often heard Africans view African Americans in just as stereotypical ways, as lazy, criminal, and violent. The disjointing of the African diaspora has been the most effective tool of white supremacy in the continued disenfranchisement of peoples of African descent. By the year 2050, a quarter of the world's population will be African. African Americans, having come from a collective wealth of absolute zero during chattel slavery, having a period of under 200 years, amassed a spending power of over $1 trillion. Reuniting the broken bond of the African and the Black American can combine strength in numbers with strength in dollars and a level of cultural influence unprecedented in world history with which we can begin to address the devastating wounds of colonization. But it will require strategy. Today, I'll be discussing 3. First of which, identification of a common enemy and a naming of our shared oppressions. Secondly, transcending neocolonialism. And third, fostering cultural understanding through the use of art, technology, and education. In 1962, when addressing a delegation of African freedom fighters, Kwame Nkrumah said, and I paraphrase, "This meeting gives us the opportunity to assess our strengths as well as those of our enemy." Who is the enemy? The enemy is imperialism, with its weapons, colonialism, and neocolonialism. Let's define imperialism. Imperialism is the practice of a nation imposing its rule or authority over another nation, most often through the use of brute military force. It is no secret that we as Black people from Ghana to South Africa to Nigeria to Haiti to Jamaica, from Louisiana to Botswana, have been the victims of a ruthless imperialism at the hands of the British, the French, the Spanish, the Dutch, the Portuguese, pretty much all white people, and in a more distant past, the Arab world as well. It is the same British Empire that colonized the land of my father that is responsible for the proliferation of African slaves across the Americas and the Caribbean. The same enemy. It's the same counterintelligence arm of America that's responsible for destabilizing the Black community with crack cocaine, that's responsible for destabilizing governments across Africa by meddling in their politics. Same enemy. Let's backtrack for a second. In 1957, Kwame Nkrumah led Ghana to independence, becoming the first nation in sub-Saharan Africa to achieve this feat. He subsequently became the nation's first president. Kwame Nkrumah was an unabashed enemy of imperialism. He was a Pan-Africanist with ties to other leaders such as Mugabe and Lumumba, and amassed a fortune in his time in power with which Ghana was able to fund liberation movements for African nations across the continent. This was a significant threat to America. And in 1966, the CIA was involved in a coup that deposed Kwame Nkrumah, setting Ghana and the continent at large back considerably. Let's fast forward a little bit. In 1979, in another military power grab, this time in South America, the CIA collaborated with a Nicaraguan rebel group called the Contras to overthrow the government. How did they fund it? They brought Nicaraguan cocaine into the United States at the dawn of the crack epidemic, effectively opening the doors for the sliding of the prison cells that would begin the age of mass incarceration. And today, there are more African people in bondage in a prison cell than were ever on a plantation. Same enemy. Now, private prisons in America are big business. One of the largest companies is called Geo Group. That same Geo Group owns carceral facilities in South Africa, where the Dutch have bastardized the African people. Now, if we go to West Africa, Dutch-owned Shell Gas Company is one of the primary drillers of Nigerian oil. Same enemy. When you begin to peel back the layers, a clear imperialist shadow is cast from the cells of Sing Sing to Johannesburg to the oil fields in Nigeria. If we can identify our common enemy, at that point, we can begin to collectivize our power. But without strategy, power is useless. And any effective strategy has to include transcending neocolonialism. Neocolonialism is the use of economic, political, and other forces to influence nations, especially former dependencies. 97% of Africa was colonized by the year 1913, roughly 60 years after the end of slavery in America. Here we are in the year 2021, roughly 60 years after most African nations achieved independence. But in most cases, it's little more than a facade for an imperialist puppeteer behind the scenes, pulling the strings. Ghana is rich in gold. Why is Ghana not rich from gold? Nigeria is rich in oil. Why then are Nigerians not rich from oil? The Congo is rich in diamonds. Why is Congo not rich from diamonds? Black queer feminist theorist Audre Lorde has a quote in which she says, "We cannot dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." On the plantations of Tennessee, the master's tools consisted of colorism, separating light from dark, house from field Negro, the banning of drums or the speaking of native tongues. In West Africa, tribal divisions were exacerbated through the lure of trade with Europeans, effectively leading brother to sell brother, sister to sell sister, and father to sell son. When we adopt the same uber capitalist dollar over everything ethos as our oppressors, we have effectively become them. We're doing their job for them. When the 5 richest men in Nigeria have a collective wealth of over $30 billion, enough to end extreme poverty, and yet 5 million face hunger, we have adopted the master's tools. One of the master's most destructive tools has been the use of religion to divide. African spiritual systems of traditions such as Vodun across the Middle Passage to become Voodoo, or Yoruba across the Middle Passage to become Santeria, have been demonized and outlawed. And Christianity has often been used to enslave, justify, and commit genocide. I don't say this to offend, insult anyone's spiritual system, just to bring light to the fact that when you have made a man hate and fear the gods of his grandfathers, or you've made him hate and fear himself. When I was in Ghana recently, I came across my father's birth certificate. I was stricken by the fact that in bold print at the top of the document, it read, Christian name first. My father's name is Edward Kweku Mensa. His mother would call him Kweku. The name Kweku wasn't even on his birth certificate. It actually was replaced with Kingsley. I was taken aback by the fact that to take part in society, my people had to discard their names. They had to discard their gods. And they had to turn their back on their ancestry. If we're going to be able to dismantle the master's house, we need to be able to look into our toolbox, identify which of our tools belong to said master, and discard those tools so we can make a plan of deconstruction using our own devices. Devices such as education, art, technology. There's a song by one of my favorite hip hop groups, Dead Prayers. The song is called They Schools. It goes kind of like this. They schools ain't teach us shit. My people need freedom. We trying to get all we could get. All my high school teachers could suck my dick, telling me white man lies, straight bullshit. African history for the Black American in public schools begins with slavery and ends with the Civil Rights Movement. There is no discussion of the history of the universities of Timbuktu, of Mansa Musa as history's richest man, of the Mali Empire, of the Ghana Empire, of Ya Santiwa, driving away the British, of the medieval castles of Zimbabwe, or even of the construction of the first pyramids as being the work of a black pharaoh named Khufu. They would have you believe, however, that Elizabeth Taylor is a spitting image of Cleopatra and Matthew McConaughey looks like Timbuktu. These are the same people that cast Tom Cruise as the Last Samurai, so I can't be that surprised. But what we need is a complete overhaul, a shift from a Eurocentric curriculum to one that properly represents us and our contributions to society and to civilization. Two of the fastest growing global markets are Black music and technology. What's referred to as the urban aspirational market, it's basically everything we influence with hip hop, is in America worth over $1 trillion. And hip hop is global. Afrobeats is global. Collaboration between Black American and African artists, fashion designers, engineers, affords us the opportunity to redefine our narrative in contrast from the master's tool of division to one of a unified front. The tech industry is globally valued at over $3 trillion. What's known as the fourth industrial revolution, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, advanced wireless and mobile technology has disrupted things everywhere. In 2018, Africa was responsible for half of the global mobile money accounts. We really are more connected than we've ever been. Tech gives us the opportunity for the underprivileged to have access to job opportunities, to have access to information and quality of life that we haven't before. And the possibility for collaboration is greater than ever. It can be easy as Black people to feel as if we've been under the heel since the dawn of time, but there was a time before colonization. And we truly are the cradle of civilization. And above all, we're hopelessly connected. If the diaspora are the limbs, or the continent is the skeleton, we are one body. Every system in the body can work with itself, but without the skeletal system, everything collapses. Our growth and our mobility has been purposefully stunted for the creation of a permanent underclass by the world's imperialist masters. If we are to overcome this status of second-class global citizen, we're going to need to be able to look together and identify our common oppressors, to reject the structures of those oppressors, and to replace them with structures of our own of understanding, art, education. At that point, That's when we can begin to mend the fractures in our damaged but strong bones. Thank you.